How are you feeling? Much better?
Yeah.
This voice is back.
Okay.
Yeah?
Getting better.
So, karibu. Just have a seat.
Thank you.
Wonderful, 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 wonderful. Right, it is what it is. It is the summit o'clock. As we said, voice check. 9 p.m. check. RBA channel 299 on DSTV check. It is the 20th day of the month of September 2023, and we are now live, and the summit is in session, and we cannot be more than grateful like we are tonight to have you right here on the show. But before even I get into the details, I just want to make you understand one thing, that this particular program is a solutions-focused, conversations-oriented program. And of course, it is also forward-looking, aimed at looking at the future. What do we need to fix for us to be able to have a better future or solve a particular issue that is topical in nature? And of course, also a platform for accountability, for us to be able to be accountable to those that we serve, those that actually are very generous and have welcomed us into their living rooms, on their phones, wherever they are, in their vehicles, and just be accountable to them. And so when you're invited to the summit, it's nothing personal. It's just to tell you, come and account and come and share views, come and be able to tell us what you're doing from wherever part you are. And many people usually want to be on this platform. So when we pick you to come to the program, we've left behind so many people who we could have brought on the show. It's not a venting session, but just to make you understand why we do what we do. All right? So let's get on to it. We are going to have a second installment of a conversation we must have, if it takes us having it every day, because the future is seemingly under threat based on what we've been able to see, and that is the issue to do with alcoholism. And we're going to unveil the myths and the realities around the issue of alcoholism. What will it take for the efforts and the campaigns against alcoholism to succeed? What will it take? So as we said, it's forward-looking. My name, as always, is Eugene Anangwe, and I want us to just look at what key people have said about this specific issue of alcoholism, what we've been able to hear from the key figures that have put their voices or made their voices heard on this specific issue. We have the UN Secretary General, who is none other than Antonio Guterres, who has said that tens of millions of people suffer from drug use disorders. Less than 1/5 are in treatment. Drug users are doubly victimized, first by the harmful effects of the drugs themselves, and secondly by the stigma and discrimination they face. We'll try to understand these campaigns, especially when they are made from a regional perspective. Can that be counterproductive in terms of stigmatizing people coming from those specific regions affected by the menace? Of course, President Dr. William Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya, has put his voice also on this. He says that we must tackle alcoholism. Many lives are being lost and destroyed as a result of alcohol abuse. National and county governments must work together to confront this serious problem. It is time alcohol is sold to designated areas only. Could this be a solution? We'll try and make sense of this. And lastly, we've also been able to hear the First Lady of Rwanda, that is Her Excellency Mrs. Janet Kagame, who actually says in a letter to the country, and she said, unfortunately, it is true that conversations like these often strike a negative chord. They can come off as controlling, insensitive, or judgmental. They shouldn't be. Unhealthy choices are common because, unfortunately, they can be tempting. But if there was ever a chance to protect you from the ache of regret, it should be seized. Yes, overdrinking may be a global rising problem, but why shouldn't we choose differently? And this is a very important aspect of things, especially when you look at Rwanda and other nations that have opted to stand out differently on those issues. Now, Having said that, let me allow us to welcome our guests who are joining us live in studio and also from far and wide. We have none other than the Reverend Francis Karemera, who is the Bishop of the Anglican Diocese of Cyangugu, joining us all the way from Rusizi. Bishop, thank you so much for making time and for joining us on this very important conversation. Also with us, who's joining us all the way from Nairobi, is none other than Anne Mathu, who is the Vice Chair of the Board of NACADA. And of course, she's joining us all the way in Nairobi, Kenya, to give us perspective on this particular issue from Nairobi. And right here in studio, I have none other than Honorable Wamaria Odette, who's the chairperson of the Committee on Social Affairs at the Parliament of Rwanda. Thank you so much for joining us in studio.
Thank you so much, Adrian.
Missing in the studio is Honorable Clarice Imani-Riho, who's actually a youth representative at the Rwanda Parliament. We had extended an invitation to her to speak to us from a youth representation perspective at the national, or rather the Parliament of Rwanda. And so I want us to kick off this conversation, first of all, from here at home. And I'll start with you, Honorable Odette, just to try and make sense of this, because the committee that you chair, the Committee on Social Affairs at the Parliament of Rwanda, is in charge of, among other things, follow-up on application of laws relating to its responsibilities. Mm-hmm. You also follow up on loan and grant agreements falling within its responsibilities concluded between Rwanda and foreign countries or international organizations. But today, we want to look at the responsibility around welfare, growth, hygiene, and health of the population, where this menace actually falls on. What is the state of this issue? When you go down as a committee or as members of this committee, what are the trends? Are we already at a crisis level? Is it time to say, hey guys, put everything down, we are about to face a crisis? What's the situation? Why should we be talking about this topic for a second time in a row, in 2 weeks?
Thank you so much, Eugene Anangu. I think I should start by really thanking you for inviting us, and also for the commitment that RBA has showed in this campaign, the Tunyweles campaign, and to thank you because this is not the first, and I think it will not be the last discussion you've had on this topic.
Yeah.
And the reason you are doing this is very crucial because I think this campaign comes at the right time.
Yeah.
Even after we have had a survey that has been conducted by RBC recently, and especially on the risks, on the NCD, on the non-communicable diseases, risk factors, where alcohol or alcoholism was seen as one of the key factor that contributes to the increase in these NCDs. Be it cancer, diabetes, hypertension, and even it causes some mental disorders and some security threats in the community. Yeah. So this survey actually showed that the high impact is escalating when it comes to the youth. And the youth, I can say, are our cornerstone to the development of this nation. I have seen the high-level dignitaries, including Her Excellency, the First Lady. She has said this even before, different leaders. I think there's a need for this call especially to the community, but also to the youth, to make sure that we reduce the impact of alcoholism.
Right.
So coming to the mandates that you mentioned, yes, we deal with mostly health issues, the hygiene, but also in complementary to other committees in Parliament. Yeah. We also, the mandate of the Parliament usually starts with putting up legislation that is required to make sure that we solve any problem, that is in terms of any kind of laws that have been established, but also we do oversight of our government action, and we are representatives of the community. So not only the Committee on Social Affairs, but the entire Parliament, if I may say, maybe I can emphasize more on the legislation along this.
Correct.
When we go to the legislative part of it, starting with the Constitution of the Republic of Rwanda,
Maybe I could hold you there, because
yes.
I'll come to the issue of legislation and its significance, anchoring all these campaigns on law and constitution, and what happens when these campaigns are not insulated with law or backed by law.
So in terms of health, hygiene, and other factors that you mentioned, I can say Rwanda is doing well.
Right, we'll come to prove that. We'll come to prove
most of the services have been decentralized, so it's good.
It's good. Yeah. Okay, Matthew, and it's interesting because for you, you've seen it. You've witnessed the impact of the aspect of alcoholism and what it can do to people, but also where you sit as the vice board chair of NACADA, a body that is actually looking into these particular issues. What are the trends that we're seeing in Kenya? Are they being blown out of proportion? We've seen, numbers that are now being termed as alarming, especially when it comes to, use of bang among young people and all that. What is the real situation from where you sit? Try to unmute, and I'm thinking you've muted your sound, Anne. We can't hear you. One more time.
Okay.
Wonderful.
My name is Anne Marco, Vice Chair of NACADA Board of Directors, and I am also a recovering alcoholic. That's one piece I never leave behind, because I have seen the pain of addiction, also the joy of recovery. So the numbers that we have, they are alarming, and something needs to be done first. Interventions have to be put in place to actually rescue the people with substance use disorders. Yeah, for now, alcohol is leading. Actually, we have more people with alcohol addiction. But then again, remember, we have functional alcoholics and non-functional alcoholics. So the numbers of the addicted people includes both functional and non-functional. But the government and the NACADA authority, we are working very, very to reduce these numbers. And one of the things that we are coming up with is community-based approach, where we'll be able to reach to every other person in the village, in the, going down to the grassroots. And also come up with county-funded rehabilitation centers, so that every county has a treatment facility where people with substance use disorders can be treated, rehabilitated, reintegrated back into the community.
Yeah, and before we even go deeper or to speak more, you've mentioned that you are a recovering, alcoholic yourself, but there are many people who probably misunderstand, or some misconception around alcoholism. What are those that you feel, have not been understood well by those who try to help those who are recovering or want to intervene, that probably you feel have been, in one or another, even exacerbating the situation?
One, many people, like before, did not understand that addiction or substance disorder actually a disease, a brain disease. It is primary, it is progressive, it is chronic, and that is that made the people suffering from substance abuse a misunderstood population, where people looked at us now as people who have chosen to be useless. And I don't think anybody in the entire world would want to be useless, especially a woman, and especially a mother, especially a wife. So it's even worse when it's a lady who is in addiction, because the first thing that they're branded as is a prostitute. So it's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of discrimination, and I love that for these years data, that people come first. We do away with stigma, discrimination, and strengthen prevention. Because the more prevention we do, the less of, we'll reduce the number of people suffering from addiction. People tend to think that this is a choice, But I don't believe not anybody would choose to go this path. Every addiction starts with use, although not every use leads to addiction. People may be able to stop, and that is why I always tell families, do not compare child with a neighbor's child, because these are two different people. One could be a social user for the rest of his or her life. One would go through the 5 stages of addiction in less than a year or two.
Yeah.
People tend to think it's a choice, it's a moral failure, but it's not. It's a brain disease that needs treatment, and psychotherapy, psychiatric interventions, then also social support.
Very interesting, and I wanted to hold it on that, and then let me bring in now the Bishop who's joining us in Rusizi. And Bishop, thank you so much for making time. And for you, I want to just understand, because this report that even Honorable Odette mentioned here in studio, you know, points out to provinces that have the highest rate of this particular problem. And that particular province that comes out here is majorly Western Province. And I wanted to understand, because you actually sit right now as we speak in Western Province, what could be the challenge? What is the issue? Are these numbers exaggerated? Or what do you see when you meet the flock every Sunday or every time you walk within that particular space? What is the cause of this? What is the problem? What is the missing link? What are we not getting in terms of trying to fix this problem, especially from a Western Province perspective?
Thank you so much, Eugene, and I'm glad to join you from the CZ here in the West. And it's very true that the prevalence here is higher than the rest of the country, and it's very evident in many ways. A clear evidence, for example, is the overflowing transit centers and rehabilitation centers within the region, and going there and seeing very young lives being looked up there because they have been misbehaving around and you know, causing insecurities of some kind, sometimes being arrested, doing wrong things, and like using drugs or trafficking them and so forth. So the situation is so worrying. The numbers are always increasing, and what worries most is the consequences. The consequences are so harsh and they are commonplace. You see people on the street, you see people in such a places, you see people being arrested by rape and so forth. And the other question is really how many Rwandans do understand the extent of this and how devastating it can be. So it's our sons and our daughters who are in this. It's not just statistics, not just numbers. It's people from our homes. And we are doing something as a church. And when we come to that, maybe we'll explain a couple of interventions that we put in place to reduce the weight of this evil. But it's very clear and can be seen.
Right. I want to stay with you just a bit, Bishop, and just ask a follow-up question, especially on the aspect of what religious leaders are doing. Because, you know, for lack of a better explanation, religious leaders are seen as very, very powerful in the sense that in terms of influence, every Sunday, at least once every week, you have control of a very huge flock, meaning that if every Sunday you have these masses and you're able to, you know, translate some information around change or behavior change, then you could be able to see a significant, you know, change, because they believe when you stand in the pulpit, when you tell them something, they believe and follow. What has been the missing link? Why hasn't this been the case in most cases? We are seeing the executive arm of government taking the lead, even with this campaign that we're talking about right now. Why are other players, or what do you feel is causing other players to be seen as not being proactive rather than reactive? They're just reactive. Let's react to this new campaign and see how to support. But what about the proactiveness? Where's the missing link? What's the issue?
I think the missing link is the general understanding of, first and foremost, the extent of the havoc. Secondly, what is causing this? How on earth are many young lives being attracted to alcoholism and getting out of the normal order of living. People need to understand also that no one single organization can handle this. We need parents to be closer to their children. We need the church to be giving messages. We need, the community members. We need almost everyone. All the people should be doing something with this. And the situation is so overwhelming that not one organization can bring it to a halt. For instance, if the churches use their usual gatherings to talk about this and give messages, there are so many young people that will not come to the churches. There are so many that are not coming. And so if we are giving messages in churches or religious leaders are doing their part, families, parents need to do their part. Schools need to do their part. And everyone that is involved in young people's lives in one way or the other.
Thank you, Bishop. I'll come back to you. Let me bring back Honorable Odette here in studio. Honorable Odette, especially we've had on the aspect of the fact that this has to be a collective effort. And I want to ask from a legislative perspective, in terms of protection of these campaigns and ensuring that they are aligned with the legal frameworks and they're protected by law and they are actually being executed under the Constitution. Because if an initiative, regardless of how good it is, and it is not enshrined within the laws, then it is as good as nothing, because anyone can walk into court and challenge these decisions. If you're talking about, let's say we are saying part of the reason is because maybe clubs are so many, we want to now stop giving licenses, someone can go to court and say we are being infringed our rights to operate and do businesses. So how are these campaigns, for example, the Tunyueles campaign, how protected is it within the legal perspective, it's just not just a campaign, within the legal perspective? Yes,
thank you so much. First of all, I agree that this should be a collective effort, and I like the way the coordination should really come in from all of us. So in terms of the legal perspective, I would say that this campaign is protected. The government of Rwanda, through a number of legislation, starting from the fundamental law, which is the Constitution of the Republic, provides or sets up fundamental principles that we must respect as a state. And there are a number of laws. Maybe you'll allow me to just reflect on a few of them. I'll not take a lot of time. Looking at our Constitution, especially in Article 10, which talks about the fundamental principles that govern the state of Rwanda, building a state committed to promotion of social welfare is very key. Social welfare for the population and ensuring that they have good health. That's a principle. And based on that, a number of laws have come up. In Article 45 of the same Constitution, it talks about that the state has the duty to mobilize the population on activities that promote good health, but also the population, or every Rwandan, has the mandate to take part in these activities. So when we say every Rwandan, it means the population, it means the business community, it means the religious leaders, it means us, all of us. We are required to take part in these activities that promote the social welfare and the health of the community. And as the survey you mentioned revealed, we really have a lot of impact when it comes to the health and social well-being of the community. I'll mention another law that it's law number 71 of 2018 relating to the protection of a child. Article 27 of that law prohibits offering or selling alcoholic beverages or tobacco to a child. And when we talk about a child, we are meaning anybody who is not, who is below 18 years.
Yeah.
But of course, scientifically, they say that our brains are even still developing up to 24 years. So it's up to us. But in terms of the legislation at the moment, when we talk about a child, we are meaning 18 years. And this same article says anybody who offers a child any alcoholic beverage or tobacco commits a crime. And once convicted, there are a number of penalties to that. And it goes on to say that if you go, that is offering, just offering the alcoholic beverage. But the paragraph 3 of that article talks about if you sell the alcoholic beverages or you encourage a child to drink or to go to bars, you commit an offense.
Yeah.
And you are liable to imprisonment up to 3 months,
Yeah.
Between 3 months and 6 months, and a fine in addition to that.
Yeah.
Other laws I can mention, there's also the law relating to offenses and penalties in general, which we use to term as the penal code.
Yeah.
I
So,
think
so
people
what
are
you're
used
saying
to
right
that.
now, if there's any lawyer who's been flexing their muscles to challenge these campaigns and what they have been doing, they cannot make it.
No, they can't make it.
They can't make
There are a number of laws. Maybe in the interest of time, we can't go into
the
all of
details.
them.
Yes.
But it goes beyond to say that any bar operator or their staff, whoever owns a business, who will be involved in giving alcoholic beverages to a drunk person who is already drunk, and then you serve them any drink of that nature, you commit an offense, and you are liable to imprisonment and other fines.
Right.
So I can really say there are even other measures that have been put in terms of the drink and drive measures on the road. I think the police can say more on that.
Yeah.
There are some instructions that have been set up to prevent children and pregnant and breastfeeding mothers from taking alcoholic beverages. So in a nutshell, I can say that the legislations are there.
Okay.
And we simply need to enforce them.
Enforcement.
Maybe the question is on enforcement.
On enforcement.
Which we must do.
Right.
Yeah.
And talking of that, Anna, I want to bring you on this because you and I, and probably those who've been following the situation in Kenya as far as, laws are concerned around battling or fighting alcoholism, we have the famous Mutuzo laws, which actually were aimed at trying to, control even the sale, the hours at the place, and how the bottles should look like, and all that actually faced legal battles within the courtrooms. And so I want to understand the role of aligning these important campaigns aimed at solving societal problems like alcoholism. What's usually the missing link? What can be done to ensure that they serve their purpose? Because up to date, there are those who argue, if we need to fix the alcoholism problem in Kenya and substance abuse, let's just implement the Mutuzo laws that were aimed to do this. Yet that hasn't been the case. It hasn't happened.
Thank you very much. As NACADA, we are mandated, our core mandate actually demand reduction and supply suppression. And then we have the Alcoholic Drinks Control Act 2010, that is the Mutuzo law. It has been working very well of it, but the last time we had a meeting, Deputy President of this country, we agreed that we will not point fingers at who is not doing what, that we should not come up and call for collective responsibility from the individual to the family, to the teachers, to the national government officers, anti-narcotics police. So we won't say that the police are not working or the chiefs are not working, because it was always a team game. The chiefs and the assistant chiefs would say they were not involved in making of the county Alcoholic Drinks Control Act. And so, yes, they were supposed to check the hours, and now the county would blame the chiefs, they are not checking. So there was a lot of blame game, which now we've decided now to put aside, come together and fight this menace. Because actually, addiction cuts across the, we cannot say it's only this region or the other region that is suffering.
Yeah.
One region is suffering from alcoholism, the other region is suffering from cocaine, heroin, and other injectables. So what we're doing now is that we are going to enhance the ADCA, that is the Alcohol Drinks Control Act, and also the county governments are also going to do the same. Because after devolution, every county has its own law. And so now what the Deputy President has done is to bring all the MCAs together and come up with a law that cuts across all the counties. Otherwise, if one county is saying that we open bars at 4 and close at midnight, another one says we open at 5 and close at 10. So there has been that discrepancy, but now they are going to come up with one act that will cut across. And I think that we will be able to move forward.
Interesting. Bishop, I want to hear also your thoughts on this, and I want to ask you a very interesting question that I want to know from where you sit. And there is this miracle that is told in the book of John, chapter 2, verse 1 to 11. I think you know that verse.
The miracle of Cana of Galilee.
Exactly. So Jesus, his mother, and his disciples attended a wedding in the village of Cana. For those who don't know, when the wine runs out at the feast, Jesus turns water into wine, thus demonstrating his divinity to his disciples. How much of a hindrance is this verse in fighting alcoholism, especially for those who say, it's in the Bible. If wine was bad, alcohol was bad, he would have turned wine into water. But he turned water into wine. How do you respond to someone who's saying, why are you guys against something that even Jesus was promoting? Just talk to me a bit about this for those who want, for benefit of those who want to know.
Thank you, Eugene. But allow me, before I come to that, to say something about the minimum legal drinking age of our country.
Yeah.
Some of us looking at the behaviors of our children, but in surrounding them, we feel 18 years is so low. And they are really still young. And they need to be supported by such initiatives as the minimum legal drinking age. I was looking around and searching around, and found that in 1984, the United States set it at 21 years. And I remember when Rwanda was setting the marriageable age, they set it to age 21. And I think there are reasons for that, but bearing in mind and considering the situation of alcoholism, our children start taking alcohol at a very early age. And if some of us would be happy if it would be lifted up a little to at least 21. And maybe that could be discussed by our legislators. I leave it to them. Coming back to the event of Cana of Galilee, of course, many people quoting that are saying there is no evidence in the Bible that we should stand on and abstain from alcohol. They will say the Bible talks about a lot of sins, but alcohol is not mentioned among the sins. My advice to this is actually, as some of you know, the campaign for the Anglican Church in our region, including the rest of East Africa, is Tumwe Zero instead of Tumwe Less. And our Tumwe Zero, we stand really by that, except when we come for the Holy Communion. Coming to the first miracle that our Lord Jesus Christ performed in Galilee, of course, it was the wine that they had, which he found them enjoying, that he made out of water. But one thing we need to understand, consider those ages. Fermenting methods of alcohol were not as developed as we have them today. Technology has brought in other things that have lifted so high the content of alcohol in the beverages. And we have even made it worse by bringing in distillation. Distilled beverages are even higher, much higher in alcoholic content than the rest. But much as there is nowhere in the Bible where you find the Bible saying alcohol is sin, when you examine closely everything that the Bible says about alcohol, other than that miracle, you would maybe decide never to touch it again. There are so many verses talking about the effects of alcohol. There are so many others. We can't pick one and run on that. The Bible is very clear about the bad thing, the bad effect alcohol pushes us into. Yeah. And that alone can cause us to think twice before we say we feel very free. I think people need to understand the consequences of alcoholism. Yeah. The health consequences, the social consequences. You know, people are becoming delinquent, children are dropping out of school at an early age, families are breaking, and so on. So there is enough that we really can stand on. And for us in the Anglican Church, we take abstinence from alcohol as a discipline, a spiritual discipline. It might not be listed among sins, but it is a discipline, a spiritual discipline that helps us to avoid falling into those other consequences that are bearable that alcohol pushes us in. Yeah, well put. I'm talking about spiritual disciplines like prayer, like studying the Bible, like being part of a Christian fellowship, like fasting. So abstinence from alcohol also actually helps us to live far better lives without regrets, without those diseases that come along with alcohol and so on.
Maybe Bishop and the rest of the panelists, has the approach been the problem? Because like you said in the initial part of this program, this conversation, you said that sometimes even as much as we see a lot of people coming to church, but many others do not come, especially young people. I want to understand maybe the approach. What are you doing about this, just to be able to target young people differently? Because this is the group that would not be able to sometimes want to sit down and listen to probably the things of the past. They want to deal with today, the X generation, the Gen Zs, the generation that is tech driven. Bishop, are you concerned about the approach, and is there something being done that you'd recommend for spiritual leaders to try and see how to best attract this group of young people to be able to get to understand what you just said initially about the discipline and the health effects, and seeing them from that perspective?
I think we need to have different innovative initiatives, not being limited to only waiting for people to come to churches and talk to them, because there is a need to understand facts about these consequences. There is need to come up with messages about behavior change that are not contradictory, messages about attitudinal change, because people have to come up with a better attitude about their lives vis-a-vis consumption of alcohol. Families have to be encouraged to pay more attention. The children when they are at home, even when they are not at home. Indiscriminate commercialization of alcohol. People are so much concerned about making profits at the expense of degeneration of our society. So we need to check, our society needs to put commercialization to change. Right. In the church as church leaders, we have to come up also with other innovative approaches. For instance, what we are trying to do here, and we are encouraging other churches to have similar approaches, is coming up with youth organizations in the church. They have been there, but they can be used as fora to discuss these things. I want to give an example where we are now encouraging every local church in our place to have what we call boys and girls brigades. You know, children can be excited about drills of soldiers, band and bugles and whatnot. So when we invite them and give them these uniforms, they look like police, they look like airmen, they like it. But it is an attraction to bring them, teach them the discipline of drill, teach them to behave, to listen to commands and commit them. But before we make them members of Girls and Boys Brigade, yes, they have had a camp, they have had teachings, but before we include them as members, they have to take vows of chastity until marriage, vows of abstinence from alcohol and other substances like drugs and whatnot. If they don't take that oath, we don't include them. But that is step number one. The other step is continuing to bring them in and educate them more about the consequences and what can help them. We need to use, we have been using holiday camps when children come home from boarding schools and those who go to day school. We bring them together in a week or a 5-day camp, let them have fun, sing, jump, play games like soccer, competitions or another, do the parade and the marching, but give them some message that will actually help them to stand by the vows of chastity until marriage and the vows of abstinence from alcohol and substance abuse.
Interesting.
And we have other groups of older people like Mothers Union and Fathers Union. We tell them that parenting does not end in their families. Even outside their family, they need people who are reinforcing this. So in the church, the men who are in Fathers Union, the women who are in Mothers Union, know that even at church and in their communities, they have this role of coming alongside parents to reinforce this teaching. So we have youth corners at our health centers, safe places for counseling. Children come there and sometimes ask questions that they are not free to ask their parents. So we have people there who are stationed there to help them, to give them messages that can correct their attitudes and also their behaviors.
Interesting,
so
Bishop.
I think it's okay, the religious leaders have a lot to do.
Thank you, Bishop. A very great initiative right there, but I want to go to Anne as we near the end of the program, just the last 15 minutes or 10 or so. And, you know, tonight, if there's someone who's watching and they've been saying, look, we are being told to stop, you know, taking alcohol. There's no safe limit of alcohol. But then they're saying this would be too drastic. I cannot, you know, stop immediately. How do I graduate from drinking more to drinking less and then eventually stopping? What sort of help or green flags would you be raising for them to be able to pick from you tonight that could be able to help them to transition from being an alcoholic to, you know, zero alcohol completely? What advice would you be sharing? Just 2-3 tips that you'd share tonight.
One, again, it will depend on what stage that person is in. For example, if a person has not gone so much down the drain, maybe he's just an abuser and not an addict, they can use the card strategy, and then they can, this person can join a support group, the Alcoholics Anonymous support group or the Narcotics Anonymous support group. We also have a helpline that is 1192, where people with a drug problem, alcohol problem can call and get telephone counseling free of charge 24/7. And then if a person has gone down the drain and actually gone to the level of not being called alcoholic, although we don't like using that word, if person is suffering from substance use disorders, then that person will have to go see a psychiatrist, then they go through detoxification and then rehabilitation. So at times, telling this person to stop all at once and very, very dangerous when there is no medical intervention. So the most important thing is to know at what stage are you at. And this is the reason as to why we have started now reaching out, going out to reach out to the addict, to these persons with substance use disorders, in the slums, in the villages, other than waiting for them to come to us. We are reaching out to them. Again, now, Akada is soon training volunteers who will be actually now be for early identification and early intervention within the villages, that proper measures can be taken, put in place before the person escalates now to being admitted into a facility. So there is a lot that we are doing. And again, we have, this is the recovery month, where we have people in recovery giving their stories, their journeys, addiction, and justice in recovery. So we have a lot going on our TV shows this month.
Interesting.
And the most important thing is to give them hope that recovery is possible.
Yeah, yeah.
When I was drinking, everybody waited for me to die. But here I am, 18 years sober, and I've written a book entitled Sober Again, and my life in addiction. So this is not something that we should be ashamed of, because addiction is a shame-based disease, whereby it's not only the person who is suffering that is in denial, but even the family, and even the community, and even the government at times. They will not talk. Right now, we have the goodwill of the executive, and we are very happy because they are supporting us in what we are doing. They are part of us, and now this one has made our work very light. And we are very grateful to the President and the Deputy President, and also Pastor Doctors, as spouse to the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, because she's really campaigning, reaching out to the people in the slums, giving them food, reaching out to the people who are injecting drugs, giving them food, giving them hope, and encouraging other pastors to come and vote. And actually, in our board, in our NACADA board, for the National Authority for the Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse, we have 2 slots for faith-based representatives. Right now, we have a reverend representing the Christians, and we have a sheikh representing the Muslims. And maybe the next time we'll have someone representing the Hindus.
Yeah.
So we are bringing everybody on board. So everybody on our board are picked from all. Personally, I'm representing the people in recovery and also the people in active addiction.
Right. Wonderful, and congratulations and for the journey walked and the work that you do. Let me hear from Honorable Odette. I want to understand also from where you sit. You mentioned earlier on the laws are there, the initiatives are there. Enforcement becomes the biggest challenge. Tonight, to those who actually are charged with the role of enforcing, what do you want to tell them?
Yeah, as I said, the laws are there. Even the policies governing this, and the campaign has been clearly explained. And you're doing a good job as the media also to reach many people. But as I said, we all need to put an effort in the way we enforce even these campaigns, what we are talking about. The bishop talked about the initiatives they are taking as church leaders, which is very key. Sometimes I had a chance of, at some point, working with the local government, and we used to see bishops, when a bishop is coming to an area, people will come in big numbers, more than maybe if an executive secretary of a sector will call them. So I think once they get this audience, there's need to be very tactical on the messages we are giving. I think Her Excellency, the First Lady, mentioned how sometimes these topics, we don't even talk about them.
They're uncomfortable.
They're uncomfortable. We think they are taboos. We don't talk about them. So I would say religious leaders, the executive or the government, us as representatives of the community, we need to come out and speak and have these innovative ideas to talk about it, mostly talking about the effects.
Yeah.
And I strongly feel that if we start this at family level also, so that at an early age, a child is told about the effect or the risks involved. Sometimes when you try, I think even the Bible you referred to talks about it, when you train a child about something good and bad, they will know it, and they will grow up knowing that. You're not telling them that drinking is a sin or whatever, but you're telling them the actual impact or the effect
of the action.
The action. So I think this joint coordination is needed. So that people who are enforcing make sure they go to where there are loopholes. We enforce, but also we put more emphasis on sensitization and education, especially to the youth.
Interesting. Let me read some comments that are coming in through our live chat on our live stream right now on the YouTube channel. We have Duhire Jean, who says, thank you for such a rich discussion. Thank you so much for that feedback. I have Ufi Tetele, who says, curfew for bar to be closed at 10. You know the government needs to impose and enforce the law and regulation and restrictions on drinking. And they come back to say that here in Rwanda, drinking buddies have power more than the wife at home. So also I think the kind of company we keep is very important. And then you say moderation is actually the most important thing, in my opinion, despite the difficulty. What are the best options for people who are already addicted? I want us to take our final thoughts on this very quickly. Maybe Bishop, I'll start with you, and also maybe your commitment within the faith-based space. What is your commitment in trying to offer a solution to this challenge that we're talking about? Just very briefly, Honorable Bishop.
Thank you very much. We are doing our best to involve as many people as possible. First and foremost, some of our clergy have undergone counseling, pastoral care and counseling studies, and they can give a listening ear to people who are facing addiction, and we've been helping people. I personally talk to young people. We try to make ourselves approachable and available whenever a young person wants to talk to us. And the other thing we do, we create awareness that these services are available. When we gather the youth, we do marching through the cities, our little cities, in every sector where we go. We march with our bands, and the young people get excited, they rally around, and when they come, to give these messages. And in many places, we invite the DPC to come and share some facts. You know, they have a lot of information about the effects of alcohol and substance abuse, so they talk. And other times, we invite doctors to come and address this youth. So it's not only those who come to our church, as many as the youth in the vicinity do come, especially when we have done the marching through the local towns.
Thank you, Bishop. Thank you, Bishop. I hear you. You say your commitment is you'll be available, and of course we'll continue with the initiatives that you've done and be inclusive on that. Thank you so much. And what about you from where you sit? What's your commitment? What are you committing to do in this particular conversation we are doing tonight, and your parting shot? Just real quick.
One is to love people. Love for them. Because you cannot help a person that you hate. So connect, communicate, embrace, treat, rehabilitate. It's going to be very easy. As long as you love them, as long as you bring out the in them, they will be there. They will be there to listen to you, and help would be very, very easy. Other than when we condemn them. Thank you.
Thank you. That's powerful, because we have relatives who we've already condemned. We say that one who drinks a lot, and we don't want to help them. So we need to love them. Bottom line is that. How about you, Honorable Odette? What's your parting shot? What's the commitment from the Committee on Social Affairs?
Yes, I would say that first we appreciate the efforts that are being put in, and the coordination mechanism, especially on the executive or government part of it. And we believe this should continue and should be done jointly. But eventually, I think in our oversight mandate as Parliament, we also enforce that through the mandate we are given by the law to see if what we have actually said we are going to do in this or the next campaign, how are people putting this into action?
Right.
So I think we can commit on that.
Right.
And also as representatives of the citizens, we go to the community most of the times. We pledge our commitment as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And we want to say thank you for making time, for listening and watching this particular conversation. Always time never allows us to continue beyond this, and we'll definitely have to stop at this particular point. The conversation always stops in this room, but it continues outside on our social media platforms. The hashtag to always use on the X platform is the Summit RW. Keep talking to us. Let's keep having this conversation. Even if we have to talk about it every day, let's do it. Thank you for being a part of the show. We'll see you again Wednesday, 9 p.m. As always, my name is Eugene Anangwe. Goodbye and good luck.